Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to introduce for you the research paper Redefining Urban Public Spaces Characters After COVID-19. An empirical study will take place in Egypt in residential spaces. The authors are Samah Al-Khatib and me, Angie Shaukat. Well, at the early beginning, I want to start with the perception of the urban space. What are our perception towards our surrounding residential urban spaces? And do COVID-19 change this perception? Do some elements have to be picked out of the picture? And do we have to preserve some elements? Well, after COVID-19, we have highlighted some topics or some keywords that are well known right now, like the social space. This is the personal space for you. Please don't let anybody be close to you enough. Words makes in progress and in parallel some questions. Why do we have to do that? When will this pandemic end? And how it can be end? And for this study, we have highlighted this question. Do COVID-19 change the characters of different residential urban spaces? Let us answer. In residential urban public spaces, there's no restrictions. You daily use it and it's open for everyone in this zone and no restrictions, which is against the COVID-19, of course. And when we talk about these urban spaces from the perspective of urban planning, we have to know that it has to be located to public uses. And sociology is very important when analyzing these spaces. It's very important to know more about the visitors, the people who are using it, different stakeholders, when they are using it, the peak points, and so on. And finally, do these public spheres have enough accessibility for people, or we're going to find that these spaces have no people in it? Of course, we know all the background about urban spaces from the early beginning, from the Greek agora, till we have reached the contemporary public spaces. New types of spaces have been introduced, like the gray zone, which is the transition between the public and private uses. Another, the leftover spaces, which are these spaces left over on the planning or in the urban design with no design. And nowadays, we are introducing a new space, which are the open spaces with the pandemic. Well, quite known as well that the man is the core of any study. His aspirations to be fulfilled, his needs, his requirements. And when man is in a space, that means the integration between people introduces the society and environment, which is introduced by the spaces. And to make this equation, we need to provide amenities, quite enough. But we have to take care of something that amenities has two main issues. That these required potentials, when we make them together to present a good environment, it may affect people. It shapes people's experience and behavior as well. And when we're talking about human behavior and how is it embedded in the physical context, it of course affects the urban structure of the space. But not only human behavior affects the urban structure of the space, the shaping of the urban structure of an urban spaces design have influences as well. And this is accordingly has divided the spaces into three main categories. The first, the urban structure of a constituted through space where site characteristics influence urban form. The second is the urban structures that constrained by space where the physical environment obstructs human activities. And the third and the last one is the mediated by space where the friction of distant facilities or inhibits the development of various parts. In order to to deliver these desired results, the researchers have worked in two parallel dimensions. The first, looking over the medical researches and other governmental precautions in parallel to the observation and reflections. Well, once more, at the beginning, we have said that COVID has introduced or highlights some keywords as the social distance. Well, it's from far old expression as previously mentioned by Gail, Alexander is another, to define that the social distance is between 1.37 meter and 3.6 meter. In here, we find that medical researchers introduced that 1.5 meter or more for running, working, or any activities when can make or transfer droplets due to people movement, even if they are back to. Here comes some governments to highlight uh, some points for her citizens, as Canada did or other governments, to avoid going outside, avoid having exercise outside, avoid going to the market, avoid and avoid and avoid. And if you want to see your friends, please use the technology. If you want to make an order, please use the technology. And we've here found that technology is replacing the urban spaces. Let's move to the empirical study to see how we can prevent this from happening, or how we can know more about the urban spaces with its categories and how they can be formed in the shadow of the COVID-19. The first one is the constituted through space, where the researchers selected the Hadabit al-Ahram, where site characteristics influence the second one is the constrained by space, where the physical environment obstructs human activities. A street in Giza Street, off of Haram Street. It's called Gamal al-Din al-Afghani Street. The third one is the mediated by space, where the friction of distance facilitates or inhibits the development of various social practices. It's in an Nakhil compound, the first settlement, New Cairo, Egypt. Well, a table was prepared for that, where the urban structure is picked out from the literature part, and as well it was embedded in the empirical part. And on the right-hand side, we can find that the urban public spaces characteristic pillars. These pillars are put out from the literature part as dominant perception, activities among observation, and so on. And the subtitles on them are according to observation and interviews with the stakeholders. Points were given to each sub-element in the pillar, where 1 point is poor and 3 points are strongly impact or positive impact. Points were collected and a chart was delivered, where we can find the three types of constructed spaces. It was found that all types of spaces were successful to welcome users, but with various variations. And it was found as well that people were likely to go outside, even the pandemic spaces, even the fear, and even if they have a very good and an excellent even indoor spaces. The mediated space being the most encouraging space with great positive elements, and the constraints ones are the least ones uh, fulfilling stakeholders' requirements in the COVID-19. And for that chart, we can find that some pillars have the same impact of different spaces, such as the urban interventions, while other pillars affect with a wide range, such as the interpenetrations and meanings and the appearance of various. Accordingly, the results show how people argue with spaces in the shadow of eventual COVID-19. And as previously mentioned through the charts, the mediated spaces are the most encouraged one to be used by people even in the era of the epidemics, while the constrained structure spaces after the pandemic are the least spaces where its use can gain positive feeling from towards the spaces. But the constituted through space after the pandemic, these spaces are having the highest impact of vision of stakeholders' implementation on spaces, where the users have high design expectations. And for the year 2020, this had witnessed a paradigm shift in the shape of the urban space. Are we facing a virtual urban spaces? This question will be the further or next research, inshallah. Thank you all.